Sometimes it just takes a look at some of the headlines when you see the disasters that are ravaging all over the world. Fires, hurricanes, tornadoes, and the like. The loss of life, the loss of people's homes is devastating. Or you can look a little closer to home at yourself and realize the division that sometimes you might feel when you scroll through your Facebook or Instagram feed. The way you thought you could be friends with people, now it's having a hard time by seeing what they post. Maybe it's the fact that you've worked hard and you've got what you think you need, whether it's a car or a house or a boyfriend or a girlfriend, but you know what? Things aren't making you feel like you think you should feel. You thought if you just got married that things would be okay, but this thing isn't working out like it's supposed to. It's not living up to its promise. And for everything that you've done in your life and everything that you've got right now, are you really happy? Are you really where you want to be? The truth is, we live in a broken kingdom. We live in a kingdom that encompasses the world, including the United States, and it is not doing what it's promised it would do. And it's not really its fault. It just cannot do what we've asked of it. Because any system that promises to bring us joy, peace, fulfillment, happiness, and does not include God is going to fail. It won't work. But there's some good news for us today. Because Jesus promised that he was entering into this world to bring a new kingdom. One that came when he was born so many years ago and is continuing today to break into this broken world that we live in and make things new and make things radiant and change what's going on, not only outside of us, but inside of us. And he invites us to be a part of this kingdom that's coming. Part of the kingdom is that Jesus asks us to live in a way that matches up with what he wants to bring. When he was getting ready to start his public ministry here on earth, he went to the synagogue and he grabbed the scroll and he unrolled it and he turned to a passage in Isaiah that was a prophecy about what the kingdom was going to be like. And he read off these things that we're going to talk about over the next couple of weeks that were going to be life-changing, reality-changing to not only the people there, but to the whole world. And he said, in your presence, these things are being fulfilled. And one of the things that he said in that kind of mission declaration right up at the top was that the kingdom that comes, the kingdom that has come and is coming, is going to be good news to the poor. Now, some of you, I know you hear that and you're like, yes, that's great. I love helping other people. I love making a difference in people's lives. And we are so thankful that we have a church that feels that way. That's why we do things like our Hope Unwrapped initiative at Christmas, where we adopt families to help them during a time when they're really struggling and to give them the things that they need. That's why we did something a couple years ago when a church burned in Hopewell. I was amazed at the generosity of our church to, in a weekend unplanned and unprepared for, we gave so much to them. That's why we help to support missionaries around the world. That's why we help to give school supplies to the local schools like you all brought in last week. And just let me tell you, because you are a generous people and because our church connects with generous organizations, we were able to partner with a organization that we're a part of through Nazarene Compassionate Ministries up in Fawn Grove, and then through our church at Leesburg, to help give over 80 packs of school supplies and backpacks and drop them off at the local schools over the last week. And it was amazing to see the pile of stuff that we were able to give because we wanted to help meet needs that people have. Good news to the poor. But some of you didn't hear that and be excited about how you get to help other people. Some of you heard that and you're like, man, I am feeling that, right? I am struggling. I am financially, things are not where they're supposed to be. Just in a lot of ways, my life just feels poor. And I don't know what to do about it. I don't see a way out. So what does it even mean to be poor then? I think in America we define poverty as not having stuff. It's the lack of something material. So I don't have clothing, I don't have food, I don't have Nikes, I don't have Air Jordan. Sometimes we get real specific, like I don't have a Starbucks in my community, or sometimes it's I don't have health care, I don't have education, I don't have something. And because I don't have something, then I'm poor. That's what poverty looks like. But if you go to other countries, or if you talk to people that are in those situations, sometimes you realize that for all of their lack of stuff, their life seems much richer than ours. And so they asked 60,000 people in these lower income, poverty-stricken countries of the world, what does poverty really look like? What is it really? And they were very clear that poverty wasn't a lack of stuff. It wasn't the fact that they didn't have a pair of jeans. Poverty was a mindset. And poverty as a mindset has three real distinct characteristics, or a couple real things that they fit together to create a picture of the world and a picture of who you in poverty are. The first thing you feel is a lot of shame. Shame because you can't get out of this place. Shame of how you got there. Just a feeling of worthlessness. A feeling of humiliation. Like I can't do more to make my life better. I can't get myself out of this. It's a hopeless place to be, and you feel trapped. Now, I don't know about you, but if that's the definition of poverty, then there have been times in my life where I have definitely been poor. Because poverty isn't just a lack of stuff. Poverty is brokenness. Poverty is the fact that because we are in a broken kingdom, everything is shattered. Everything is not how it's supposed to be. And so we have this fact that when sin entered the world, relationships broke. And when your relationships break, that's where poverty really starts to kick in. Because my relationship with God is broken because of sin. And so I do not have, in my sinfulness, the same access of the presence of God in my life that He desires for me and that I need to have real life. Because of this brokenness, I'm not even in a good relationship with myself. Like I deceive myself, I lie to myself, I get stuck not realizing who I am. I can't find purpose or identity really, and I spend so much time searching for those things. My relationship with each other, with you and me, it's broken too, because in this broken system, we don't trust each other. We don't really know each other. Think about this. How many times have you had a need that didn't get met because you were unwilling to share it with other people? What would they think of you? Could you trust them? Would they make fun of you? Would they take advantage of you? So you didn't even say anything. Or how many of you would, if you were honest, would realize that because you're so self-absorbed in what you've got going on, that even if you had the means to help the person next to you, you wouldn't even notice that they needed it. We are all broken. We all have this mindset somewhere inside of us, making us poor. Not just mentally, but that plays itself out in how we live into poverty of physical stuff too. And the first thing that you need to do if you're going to bring good news to the poor is realize that you are poor too. That you have brokenness that needs to be dealt with. And the only answer for true brokenness is Jesus. For He is the one who binds up the brokenhearted. And we have to realize that before we can do anything else. Because here's what happens. We know scientifically why people do not react compassionately to people that are in need. Even people who grew up in places of big need will reach a point where it is harder for them to help others who are in need. And there seems to be some sort of line, a threshold that we cross, that the further we get distant from the need, the less likely we are to help. And so the more success, the more wealth, the more affluence, the more promotions, whatever it is, the more we get elevated, the less likely we are to help people underneath us, because we forget what it was like when we were in their shoes. We forget what it was like to be in that situation, and we write off things that happened to us. Like we forget the people that helped us to empower us. We forget the ways that something changed in order to make a difference in our life. We forget the breaks we got. We forget the answers to prayer. And so we look at the people who are underneath us, and instead of being compassionate and wanting to help, we say they need to help themselves. They got themselves into that mess. They need to get themselves out of that mess. And we lose this level of compassion because we forget our own brokenness. And we have to realize that we are no better than anyone else if we're going to bring good news to the poor. And this bringing good news to the poor, this serving others, is a big, big deal to Jesus. You see, Jesus is very specific about the faith that he expects from those who are going to follow after him. He gives us some things that are non-negotiable. It's not like, well, if you do this, this is great. It's like, if you were going to follow after me, then this is what I'm expecting of you. In Matthew chapter 25, he is getting ready to go to the cross. It is days, moments away. And this is something that he shares as one of his last things that he wants to stick into the minds of his followers. When he finally arrives, blazing in beauty, and all his angels with him, the Son of Man will take his place on his glorious throne. Then all of the nations will be arranged before him, and he will sort the people out, much as the shepherd sorts out sheep and goats, putting sheep to his right and goats to his left. And then the king will say to those on his right, "Enter, you who are blessed by my Father. Take what's coming to you in this kingdom. It's been ready for you since the world's foundation, and here's why. I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me a drink. I was homeless and you gave me a room. I was shivering and you gave me clothes. I was sick and you stopped to visit. I was in prison and you came to me." Then the sheep are going to say, "Master, what are you talking about? When did we ever see you hungry and feed you, thirsty and give you a drink? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and come to you?" And then the king will say, "I'm telling the solemn truth. Whenever you did one of these things to someone overlooked or ignored, that was me. You did it to me." Then he's going to turn to the goats, the ones on his left, and he's going to say, "Get out, worthless goats. You're good for nothing but the fires of hell." And why? "Because I was hungry and you gave me no meal. I was thirsty, you gave me no drink. I was homeless and you gave me no bed. I was shivering and you gave me no clothes. Sick and in prison and you never visited." And those goats are going to say, "Master, what are you talking about? Where did we ever see you hungry or thirsty or homeless or shivering or sick or in prison and didn't help?" And he will answer them, "I'm telling the solemn truth. Whenever you fail to do one of these things to someone who was overlooked or ignored, that was me. You failed to do it to me." And then those goats will be herded to their eternal doom, but the sheep to their eternal reward. Jesus expects his followers to be righteous. And righteousness here means to be in right relationship, to have all of those things that are broken restored. And when you have that brokenness restored, it looks like kindness and compassion to the least of these. And here's the crazy thing. When you do that, you're ministering directly to Jesus. You want to know what Jesus looks? A lot of times, Jesus looks like the AIDS patient in Kenya. He looks like the young girl being trafficked in Asia. He looks like the child stuck in a detention center at a border somewhere. Jesus is in a 10 by 10 shed. He's down the street pushing a cart with everything he owns in it. He is desperate, he is hungry, he is thirsty, and he is calling out to his church to respond. The unrighteous, the ones who, even if they say their relationships are restored, are still living in brokenness, they can see the desperate plight of their fellow human beings around them and have no compassion and do nothing about it. In 1 John 3, 17 and 18, it says, "If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person?" Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. And when I hear those passages and I read what Jesus said in Matthew 25, it really makes me reflect, calls me to prayer. What kind of kingdom am I living in? In the name of Jesus who binds the brokenhearted, I need to realize that I know what brokenness is, and I need to go to others who are broken and say, "You are not alone. We are in this together. Brené Brown said, we've divided the world into those who need help and those who offer help. And the truth is that we are both. Or in other words, do unto others what you would have them do unto you, people. Remember what brokenness is like and do something about it. I think sometimes we get stuck here, though, because even if we realize we're broken, we don't want to do it in a way that makes things worse, that enables unhealthiness or sinfulness, that makes their situation become worse. Like I remember one time there was a family that got helped with a show that would come and redo your house, which was awesome, and they had this amazing house, but then they had to move out because they couldn't pay the taxes on their new property values. We don't want to be people who make things worse when we're trying to help. And so there are two ways that you can help honor Christ. And he even tells a story that demonstrates both of these. It's called the story of the Good Samaritan. You can find it in Luke chapter 10. And it's got an unlikely hero because to Jesus' listeners, there was no such thing as a Good Samaritan. Samaritans were heretics, infidels, evil. You would go out of your way to avoid them at all costs. You would not talk to them. You would not touch them. You would not acknowledge them. And yet he becomes the hero of the story, for he's the one that brings good news to the poor. So one day there was this man, he was going down the road, he was traveling, and he got attacked by bandits. They took everything he owned, everything he had, and they left him bleeding on the side of the road to die. A religious man walks by and sees him, but he does not want to be late for his religious activities and rituals. He doesn't want to inconvenience himself, and he thinks he's being righteous because he's leaving the man to bleed and die in order to go and do these things that he thinks God wants him to do. And so he leaves the man there. And then a clergy person comes by and he sees the man bleeding over on the side of the road, but he doesn't want to make himself unclean. He doesn't want to sacrifice and make himself disqualified from serving in the temple that day. And so he leaves the man there, doesn't ask for help, doesn't call, just leaves the man there bleeding. And then the Samaritan comes. The man who should have nothing to do with the person who is bleeding and dying on the side of the road. And he gets off of his donkey and he goes over and he binds his wounds. He stops the bleeding. He carries him up and puts him on his donkey. He rides him into the nearest town. He pays for him to get put up in a hotel. And then as he's leaving, he says, look, I know this guy's going to need rehab. He's going to probably need some help finding a job again, finding a place to live again. He's going to need lots of help. Do whatever he needs. I will pay for it. I will come back. I will check on him. I will cover whatever the expenses are. The man in the story does two specific things to help the guy on the side of the road. The first thing is the Good Samaritan brings relief. You see, we are called to serve people, and sometimes to serve people, we have to meet their needs. So relief is meeting the temporary needs that people have. It is stopping the bleeding. It is binding the wounds. You know, there are certain things you have to get done at a base level in order to do any of the really good things that come after it. It's called Maslow's hierarchy from a psychology perspective. Like, if you want a student to learn, you got to make sure they've got some sleep, they've got some clothes, they've got some shelter, and they've got some food in their belly. And then they'll be able to learn. If you take any of those away, their ability to get an education shrinks significantly. You have to deal with the relief part first before you can move on to the other things. And so part of what we do is we want to be people, we want to be a church that brings relief. That's what our Hope Fund is for. Our Hope Fund is money that we set aside that our people can give to that helps meet temporary needs. It gives people money to get a job, drive to a job interview. It gives people food. It gives people help with a medical bill they couldn't pay, or to keep the electricity on when they've had a hard month. That's what that is for, because if you don't take care of those basic things, you can't deal with the other stuff. But he didn't stop there. He also moved to restore this man. You see, righteousness is in relationships. So this wasn't a drive-by. He didn't just drop some money and run and feel good about himself like, boy, look what I did. He got invested in this man's life. He set him up in a hotel. He paid for his recovery. In other words, he was willing to sacrifice time and money and whatever else was needed to make sure that this person who was broken could find wholeness. Restoration is this long-term commitment to rebuilding wholeness. If you want to honor Christ in serving people, give them relief, and then help them find restoration. Because we are called to know that these people are valuable to God. They're not our projects. They're not hobbies. They're not something we do so we can pat ourselves on the back. We are to give them dignity and love. We are to help them be empowered by the Spirit of God that is in you, because they are people that Jesus died for. That's how valuable they are. And so this man, the Good Samaritan, was able to do these things for this person in the story, and it made all the difference in his life. And I know this hasn't always been the most fun message to hear, but it is something that Jesus is incredibly serious about. So I wanted us to take the time to be serious about it today too. Like, do you realize where your brokenness has been and where it might even be right now? And how you do not have the right to look down on anybody because of that. We're all in this together. Are you working to bring relief and restoration to people? Are you willing to give up something, to sacrifice so you can help someone else be empowered and lifted up to have the real life that God intended for them to have? To help His kingdom come right here and right now. Jesus takes this seriously. And He's asking us, you and I, to play a role in helping this to happen. This is one of the main ways that God's kingdom comes, right here and right now. Would you pray with me? Father, thank you for people who recognize your call to empower the poor and also realize that the poor is often me. Help us to see and hear the cries around us. Give us your heart for those who are struggling. Don't let us give up. Don't let us become cynical. Don't let us become overwhelmed by the needs that exist. But may we recognize that you are the one that meets needs, and we are simply used by you. If we want to be an individual, a church, a family, a world that says we follow you, then we have to be involved in helping people connect to real life in you, helping them step into a new way of living. We need to be good news to the poor. So may your kingdom come and your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Amen.